So, the liturgical texts of baptism speak of the priesthood of all the baptized. The rubrics of the prayer book, however, use the word priest to refer to ordained priests. Properly speaking, the orders of ordained ministry are bishops, presbyters, and deacons. These are separate and distinct orders of ordained ministry, each with its specific function. First bishops, then presbyters, both came to be called priests. In the Middle Ages, the orders of ministry came to be understood not as functions within the ministry of the church, but as participation in varying degrees in the priesthood of Christ. In other words, in the Middle Ages, bishops, presbyters, and deacons were understood as chief priests, priests, and apprentice priests. As one scholar has noted, there was an omnivorous presbyteriate. It devoured the other orders of ordained ministry. Our present Book of Common Prayer, the 1979 Book of Common Prayer, attempts to recover the patristic idea of three separate and distinct orders of ministry, and not a hierarchical ladder, where one advances from the diaconate to the priesthood and a few advance further to the episcopate, like super priesthood. The prayer book continues to use priest for presbyter, but it does so in a way that wants to suggest the distinct function of that order. So what are the functions of these orders of ministry? Again, they're set forth in the preface to the ordination rites on page 510. So you ought to take a look at that. Bishops, the Book of Common Prayer says, carry on the work of leading, supervising, and uniting the church. Presbyters, as associates of the bishops, take part in the governance of the church in carrying out its missionary and pastoral work, and in the preaching of the word and the administering of his holy sacraments. Deacons assist the bishops and the priests or presbyters in this work. These three functions, then, are revealed in the way that each order functions in worship. So, not just independently in a vacuum, but in worship. The functions are set out in general terms in the directions that you find on page 13 of the prayer book concerning the service of the church. So you can see I'm taking Hatchett's commentary very seriously, and I'm roaming around the entirety of the prayer book to see how it fits together and strengthens our understanding of ministry and worship as a whole, and the functionality of the various people in the practice of worship. So on page 13, the prayer book says this: in all services, the entire Christian assembly participates in such a way that the members of each order within the church, lay persons, bishops, priests, that is, presbyters, and deacons, fulfill the functions proper to their respective orders as set forth in the rubrical directions for each service. You have to pay attention to rubrics. Hatchett's going to tell you that. Anyone will tell you that. The fine print, the italicized print, or what used to be printed in red, that's why they're called rubrics, are just as important as the words we pray. You have to pay attention to the rubrics. The leader of worship in a Christian assembly is normally a bishop or a presbyter, a priest. Deacons, by virtue of their order, do not exercise a presiding function, but like laypersons, may officiate at the liturgy of the word, whether in the form provided in the daily offices, or, when a bishop or presbyter is not present, in the form appointed at the Eucharist. Under exceptional circumstances, when the services of a presbyter cannot be obtained, the bishop may at discretion, authorize a deacon to preside at other rites, subject to the limitations described in the directions for each service. That is, the rubrics. So when we look at those initial directions concerning each service, we find more specific language, as do the rubrics in the text of the services and in the additional directions given after the service. And in particular, the Book of Common Prayer 1979 pays much more careful attention to the appropriate functions of deacons and laypersons than did any of the previous editions of the Book of Common Prayer. I hope you'll pay attention to that. It's tremendously important as we think about our ministry as baptized persons, as we think about how we share in the royal priesthood, but how we also uphold historically the functions of the ordained priesthood. So, Chad, you got me off on this, but I think it was important to draw out some of the implications of your contribution to our discussion and to begin to direct you in a thoughtful sort of way for how your reading in Hatchet might inform your use of the Book of Common Prayer, but also your appreciation of the rubrics and how those rubrics give directions for how all of us as baptized Christians may participate more meaningfully in the worship of the church.